One of my favorite scenes in this is not the intrigue or the twists. I'm gonna be real with you guys. It's something a bit more steamy, but I think there's a reason for that. No, I think there's a legitimate reason for this. Let me explain. Welcome back, everybody. We're here to talk about Dune Prophecy, Episode 2. There were some things I liked about this episode. There were some things that I feel I really just need to see more from in general from this series for me to really get what I want out of it. We're going to talk about more of that as we go, but know that I have some thoughts. I have some thoughts on this one. I'm still overall, I'm going to tune in next week, but I have some thoughts. Before we jump into it, just a friendly spoiler warning for those of you that don't know what I do here. We're going to be reviewing the episode. We're going to be talking about it. I'm going to give you a little sort of short plot summary on sort of what we saw happen, and then we're going to get into the nitty gritty of it. A lot of secrets, a lot of twists, a lot of turns this episode. So these are some pretty big spoilers. So just heads up. So basically, this episode is dealing with the fallout of what happened to Pruitt mainly, but also what happened to Keisha at the end of the last episode, which is they were presumably burnt up from the inside by Desmond, presumably. In this episode, Desmond does claim to be the person responsible, at least for Pruitt's death. It is also implied that he is behind Keisha's death. He talks about how she was corrupting the Emperor and had corruption in her heart, is something that Desmond says. We're also dealing with some other stuff, some other moving pieces around this. So there's tension, obviously, between the Emperor and the Duke. There is a rebellion that is stewing. We also find out that the sword master that is actually in the palace, who is training Inez, is actually a traitor who is working with the rebellion. We also find out that the rebellion is actually orchestrated by the Sisterhood. This is all part of their great plan to keep everything in check. And we also learn that what has started here with the people burning from the inside out is part of this prophecy of the Sisterhood coming to an end. So Valia is taking this very personally, very intensely, very seriously. And Tula is also doing her own thing. She's actually taking one of her best pupils and is using that pupil to try to reach back to the original Reverend Mother who passed away, as we saw in the previous episode when we learned sort of some of the history of that. She's actually her granddaughter, and she's trying to do this ritual that is called the Agony. It involves poison, and it basically allows you to connect with people in your lineage, so you can ask them questions and stuff, and you don't really know what'll come up, apparently, but they're hoping that they can get some more information on this prophecy that is supposed to be, you know, basically their doomsday. So that's another thing that we have going on. That's basically the episode. That's what we're focusing on. In the end, we end up with this standoff between Valia and Desmond, and ultimately Desmond comes out kind of the victor there, where Valia tries to exert control over Desmond, and it finds she's not able to use the voice over him. So overall, I would say there were some twists and turns in this episode that I quite enjoyed, but it did leave me feeling disappointed. There's some reasons for that, but let's talk about some of the things that I did like in terms of what we're doing here. I liked that Inez's sword master is part of the rebellion. We also find out he's an Atreides, which I think is huge, and I personally thought that was something I wasn't expecting that to happen. I thought that was cool. It's clear that he also has a lot of feelings about Inez, so, you know, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out if he gets exposed. Obviously, Valia wasn't able to get that information to the Emperor, so I don't know what's gonna happen with that, or if anything will happen with that. I hope something happens with that. This is kind of related to a problem that I have about this show, but like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. That is one of the things that I liked. I also love that there was indeed a rebellion, which is kind of backing up what Desmond said, and that in turn we find out that this rebellion is actually orchestrated by the Sisterhood. Of course it's orchestrated by the Sisterhood. Everything here is carefully orchestrated by the Sisterhood. Everyone is basically working with them, and all of this is being done so that they can hopefully bring in the future this time of prosperity. They're just trying to make sure that everybody is good, and this is their way of controlling everyone without anyone knowing, except apparently some people maybe do, because Desmond calls Valia out, and he even has this really great line where he explains to her that he's realized what she's afraid of, and what she's afraid of is just not being heard, speaking and not being heard. And it's perfectly delivered, that line, because it comes from a place where she has just tried to use the voice on him and it has not worked. And isn't that also just a big fear as a person? But especially I feel it feels very feminist in terms of the tones there, in a way that feels powerful. This idea of being a woman and just wanting to be heard and just wanting to be seen and not being able to do that. But this is also, I would say, a universal theme as well. As people, I think we all want to be heard and seen. So it's not just a feminist concept, if you will. Something else that I feel in this episode, though, in regards to that, is there are lines that are really strong, and then there are some lines that feel quite predictable. So that is the other side of that coin, where there are things that feel profound in here, and then there are things like when Desmond talks about how he can do like great and like terrible things. I was literally finishing that line as he was saying it in my mind, and I had it by rote. So there are some things that just feel very, I don't know, basic. They're just expected. This show is doing a weird thing where some things I feel like I can expect like this, and then there are other things that I never would have seen coming. So I would like more of the second, and I feel that it would make the show better. But some things are a bit predictable just in terms of the way people even talk to each other. And actually, when it comes to Desmond, I do find him to be a very fascinating character. I'd say at this point, he's the most interesting character in the show. And I would say that has to do with the fact that he is just such a mystery. Like, I'm not really sure why he wants to work with the Imperium. It kind of is implied here that it's just, he almost feels prophetic in a way. He feels like he's this prophet that just really believes in the Imperium and wants to be like allied with them, and he has this gift and he wants to share it with them. I don't know if he's just in pursuit of power. I hope not. I hope there's something bigger at play here, because it feels like there's something bigger. But it could just be that he just wants power. I think that's what Valia is thinking, but I also feel like she's not even willing to write him off as that simple. Like, she needs to figure out what's going on with him. And I think it's interesting that in this episode, the Empress, who also refers to the sandworm as Shai-Hulud, says that, you know, he survived this attack. Like, he survived being eaten by Shai-Hulud. That's crazy. And sees an importance in him. And I wonder if through Desmond is actually how we're going to get to the prophecy that leads us down the line to Paul, way, way down the line, to Paul being born, and Paul ultimately ending up becoming like this one true destined ruler who was also crafted to be the perfect leader by the Sisterhood. Or, you know, was kind of crafted to be the perfect leader, since obviously that didn't go exactly to their plan, but he did end up ushering in this era of peace, I believe. Granted, like I've said before in previous reviews, I've only read the first Dune book. I do want to check out some of the other ones, but I digress. So my apologies if I'm getting any of that somewhat wrong. Feel free to let me know down in the comments if there's something I have misspoken on here. I'm no Dune expert, but I do like the world. Because I feel like Desmond is a character that could ultimately be twisted to serve the Sisterhood, but how they're going to get around to doing that with him, I don't know, because he seems like he is just steps ahead and is trying to really curb their influence here. He really is a thorn in their side. However, this is the thing. I find Desmond to be really interesting. I even find the royal family to be pretty interesting. But my interest in the Sisterhood is kind of starting to wane a bit. Like, I just don't find a lot of characters there that I'm super interested in. I think the Bene Gesserit are fascinating in the world, but I'm struggling to connect with pretty much most of the characters, honestly, in this story at this point. Even the characters that are really cool. I mean, I think Valia is a cool character. I think Inez is a cool character. I think Desmond's a cool character. And yet I still struggle to connect with them because I just feel like there's no personal element there. Like, there's not a lot of an emotional connection. I don't see them going through things that I can relate with. And not that you have to relate with every character, but I think the beauty of Paul is that Paul is a character that you do feel deeply connected to, for better and for worse at times, because I don't think that Paul is supposed to be this like perfect character, really. I think that Paul has a lot of flaws, and I think Paul sometimes honestly can be a huge jerk in the book anyways. I think he can be a huge jerk, but you can feel what he's feeling. There is a connection there, and I just am not feeling that here. One of the characters that they made me super interested in, the girl who undergoes the agony, they also just kill her off at the end of that, or at least that's what it seems like. I mean, I don't know, maybe next episode we'll find out she miraculously survived. I hope that happens, because she also finds out a secret that the Sisterhood has been keeping, which is that her mother didn't die in childbirth. She was you know, killed by Valia using the voice, which is a thing that probably only a few people in the Sisterhood know, only select few. So that could shake up the Sisterhood if that truth were to come to light, or just even seeing her having to reconcile this idea of, you know, this adopted mother that she's had has not been honest to her about what happened with her birth mother and having to reconcile those things. That could be an interesting journey for us to follow along with, and yet we're robbed of it. So overall, I just feel like the characters here are a little bit bland. I just want some more personality from them. I want to connect to them a little bit more. The situations are interesting, but I just don't feel a personal attachment to any of them yet. I don't really feel any sense of emotional connection to anyone. I mean, it's hard as well when I feel like these characters also are struggling to even have any emotional connection to each other, barring a few like sexy bits that we get. And I will say the sexy bits in this, I think, are very well done. The scene, I can't talk about it, but one of my favorite things in this episode is a certain scene that if you know, you know. I don't even know. Let me explain, because there is a legitimate reason. But if you know, you know. I have alluded to it, I think, as much as I can. What I will say is I think the reason that I actually find myself more connecting with those scenes is because there's actually connection happening in those scenes. Steamy, sexy, sometimes emotional connection. It's very sexy, but at least it's like emotive. At least it's expressive. And some of the other stuff just feels kind of drab by comparison. How am I supposed to care when characters don't even care about each other and when they're not even allowed to care about each other? I mean, when we actually get some emotional response, a strong emotional response from Inez to Keisha's passing here, literally she is told to move outside her body and just dispel that with her training, which I mean is cool, but no, I want to connect with you. Or I want to see more, at least the struggle of you having to overcome that emotion and you having to use the training to push it out. That's something that I feel like we get with Jessica in Dune that is just done better in the new Dune films, that is just done better than what we see here. And I don't know, maybe we'll get more of that. I don't know. But with a television show, I feel like you have a lot of time to really hit home some of these key beats, these key important elements to a show that allow us to connect with characters. You have a little bit more breathing room, and I'm just not seeing them really utilizing that here. So overall, I think I got to give this one a 3 out of 5. Well, I feel like there's a lot of elements of it that are still very well done, and I really liked the intro. Honestly, we didn't even talk about the intro, but we actually got an intro here, and I really liked it. Really liked the music, all of that stuff. I don't feel that this show is giving me more to connect with. In fact, I feel myself slowly disconnecting from it more and more. So we'll see how episode 3 goes. I hope that it's amazing, and I hope that everything I've said here is disproven with episode 3, because I really want to like this show, because I really think Dune is a cool world and I would love to see more come out of it. I would love to see more spin-offs and more just content and more media, because it's a cool story. So fingers crossed. I mean, people did say that, you know, this is not based off of the core. This is not Frank Herbert. And so maybe that is why. Maybe you were all right. Maybe we only stay with Frank Herbert. We shall see. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking of this episode. If you're loving it, if you're hating it, why not? I will see you next time. And until next time, my friends, as always, stay nerdy. Bye!